So there's allegedly a Maryland real estate investor that is using an HOA loophole to steal the equity in Prince George's County and Baltimore, Maryland residents, mainly black neighborhoods, according to this video that we're about to react to. But this is also the same real estate investor that did the same thing to Kevin Spacey about a year ago when he was going through some legal troubles. So let's check out this video and we're going to react to it.
Battlement on his property in Baltimore have to do with the theft of black wealth in Prince George's County? Well, I'm going to tell you. So, and it has to do with me. I have been in contract on a property, $1 million property, since April of 2024. We still haven't closed yet. I was ready to close this escrow, this transaction, within 2 weeks. What was supposed to be a routine closing turned out to be a nightmare. The seller had fell behind on his HOA dues because he had been gravely ill over the last few years, and he's been hospitalized for months on end. So he fell behind on his HOA dues to the tune of about $8,000. Same investor that is dealing with Kevin Spacey went and purchased the HOA lien. Once they found out the nature of what was going on, they offered to pay him back the $8,000. He didn't want it. He wanted the house with over $500,000 in equity. Even in the closing, they had 3 times the amount set aside to pay this investor back the $8,000 times more than 3 times that. Here's the issue. The bill of sale was done incorrectly, and there was no proper notice served to this gentleman. They know that for a fact. Here's the other thing that I know. The same HOA attorney and the same investor are appearing in court on several properties in several communities all throughout the county. So not just the property that I'm purchasing, but other other communities. Same HOA attorney, same investor. So you got to wonder why. How is this investor getting access to all of these properties with the same HOA attorney? This investor hit the jackpot, just like he did with Kevin Spacey. He pays $8,000 and he gets $1 million property with over $500,000 in equity. So they go to court again in a couple of weeks. And if this investor wins, this poor, gravely ill gentleman gets put out on the street with no money, no equity that he's put into a property over the last 20 plus years. Even if he does win, this gentleman has the ability to appeal until he exhausts this poor old man and he gets the property that way. And this is not only happening to this man. I searched the court records for the state of Maryland, and he has over 50 cases right now where either he's foreclosing on someone or he's evicting someone. And from what it looks like, some of these cases have been dragged on for years. I can imagine that someone or a few or several of those people in those cases were victims of predatory practices. So I need y'all to get this word out, because it's not just about this homeowner, but it's about the theft of wealth that's happening to people in this county that's gone unchecked. So please share, because these practices need to be stopped. Battlement on his property in Baltimore.
Now, I know exactly who this investor is, but that's beside the point. But here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. Real estate is a cutthroat business. You know, this is like almost like the streets, right? But it's legal. It's very dirty. You know, you can't trust anybody in real estate. And I'm a real estate agent. You know, I learned early on that real estate is a dirty game. You know, for anybody that doesn't know, I originally learned real estate from some of the people that were locked up with Rayful Edmond, you know, the kingpin back in the day in DC. And they came home and they got into real estate investing and, you know, things of that nature. But I learned from them early on. It's cutthroat. Like, people will do anything to get a deal closed. People will do anything to get a deal because of the amount of money that is involved in real estate. Now, this is a loophole generally with liens, for example, a tax lien, and it all depends on, you know, the state that you're in. So with a tax lien, for example, you purchase a tax lien from, you know, the county, the city, the state, whatever. And generally you get a return on that. And then the lien is released once the seller pays it. But, and I didn't even know this, with an HOA lien, apparently that's not the same case, right? So they offered this guy 3 times the amount, which is $8,000. So they offered him 3 times that to do a lien release, and he said no, he doesn't want the property. Now, again, in real estate, people are very greedy. Now that's a hell of a come up, right? Buying an $8,000 lien, and $1 million property, and taking this property over, right? That's it's a dirty game, but people do this, right? So from what it sounds like to me is whoever this HOA attorney is, he has access to. He's probably an attorney for some of these HOA organizations. That's how he's able to get some of this inside information. So if I was, in this situation, I honestly think that, this person should contact the attorney general and maybe sue the HOA, because if you're behind, and I see this all the time, HOA liens, when I used to do wholesaling, we used to reach out to people that had HOA liens and try to help them, dispose of their property. If obviously they're struggling, if they have a lien, but I'm not sure, 100% sure what if there is a law on redemption, like as far as how much time you have to pay the HOA back before they sell that lien. And I honestly didn't even know that selling HOA liens was even a thing. I really didn't know, right? And the more you know, right? So, this unfortunate. I think it's kind of fucked up. He could 3 times on your money that's a hell of a return. That's a decent return. But apparently, like she said, he got over 50 cases. So this is his hustle, and depending on who it happens to, if you know what I mean, like this is different than this. Something like this will they'll nip it in the bud. They'll come and say, hey, you can't do this anymore. If you buy an HOA lien, then okay, you can get a return just like with tax liens, and then you have to release them. The lien has to be released. So this is a good hustle for now, but in the future, I don't think that this will continue to go on, because I saw in that the court dockets that she showed, I saw Montgomery County. That's a lot of this. Now, when it happens to this, it's not that big of a deal. But when it's a lot of this, and considering this guy is a foreigner, they're going to nip that in the bud real quick. Now, I don't think that, he'll be charged with anything, because it technically is a legal loophole. And at the end of the day, you're supposed to pay your HOA, just like you're supposed to pay your taxes, right? So if somebody scoops up a tax lien, we all know if they don't pay those taxes back, then that person can get foreclosed on. That's law in most states, or all states, right? That have tax lien sales, tax deed sales, right? So it's unfortunate, and I think the best thing that you can do if you can't pay your HOA is maybe to reach out to somebody, and just to see if the HOA will, or what their procedures are, just in case you can't pay. Or if there's something you can do, at least know your timeline before they start selling liens. Now, I'm not sure how much this person's HOA is, but $8,000 sounds like they didn't pay the HOA for years. Just my opinion, right? Every HOA is different. My HOA is like $35 or $30 a month in there somewhere. So for it to reach $8,000, like this person, in my case, if mine reached $8,000, that means I didn't pay my HOA for a long time. Now, I don't know how much this person's HOA is. I don't know what neighborhood it is. It could be, if it's a $1 million property, it could be like a Woodmore or something like that. I really, she didn't give the details on the property. So, there are some HOAs where, you're paying $100, $150 a month if there are real amenities like a community pool, playground, trails for biking, community centers. So $8,000, okay, if you're paying $100, $150 a month HOA, eight grand is like, okay, 8 years or so, a little bit under, maybe 5.5 years. But it's unfortunate. And the thing is, this is just another real estate hustle. He's essentially, what he's probably doing is foreclosing on these people, getting the house, fixing the house up, putting it up for sale. It is what it is, and again, it's all just one of those education things. There's nothing you can really do about it. Now, he can fight this in court. Hopefully this gentleman has the money to go back and forth. But yeah, it is what it is. Like, I see this type of stuff or something similar all the time. And, it just sucks that it takes so long for laws to actually change and be adjusted. But this is most likely an attorney general problem. Like, this is something that they would have to take on and, get the General Assembly or whoever to change, to do some sort of adjustment to how this is done. And even then, somebody will then find another loophole, right? And you know, it's all on what you know. Like I met this guy, he makes a living off of people calling him, right? So he owns a property and some kind of way it's listed as vacant. So when wholesalers call him or text him, you know, he'll say, hey, I'm gonna do not call this, don't call me again. And eventually they call again. And what he does is he files a lawsuit against them and then calls them and say, hey, I'm filing this lawsuit against you. He has them served and he says, hey, you broke this law, so you owe me, if we go to trial, you owe me $5,000. But we can sell it out of court right now for $1,200 cash. And I'll dismiss the lawsuit. Like there's a guy that's making a living doing that. And you have these new people that come into real estate that don't know anything about it or about this guy. They're hitting him up, and he's pretty much, it's legal extortion. That's what it is. Now, granted, they're breaking the law because he's on the do not call list, but the more you know, right? So like there are things that are laws that are set up that people do take advantage of. And there was another guy that I saw on Instagram. If there's something on his credit report that he doesn't agree with, he'll dispute it, and based on how the company responds, he'll file a lawsuit. He knows how to file lawsuits himself. And let's just say he'll file a lawsuit for like $15,000. He'll get the company to just cut him a check for $5,000. And he just does it over and over and over and over and over because they don't want to go against him in court. So they just say, hey man, just dismiss the lawsuit. Here's a quick $5,000. So it's all on what you know, how to use the legal system. And people losing their houses, their homes, $1 million homes over a little bit of money is kind of unnecessary. But again, the laws in this country are so behind the because a lot of this information, I'm sure you can Google. And, and he has an inside attorney. So I'm not sure if that attorney is stepping on some sort of line where it's like, okay, what you're doing is like unethical. But I'm gonna actually keep up with this story and we'll see what happens. I appreciate you all tapping in.